They told me my mother left me on the steps of San Callisto. I do not remember her face, only the stone chill beneath my back and the ringing of church bells that must have been the first sound I ever heard. By the time I was old enough to ask, the answer was always the same. She had nothing, I was nothing, and so the church became everything. But not the church the pilgrims see, not the sunlit basilicas, not the incense clouds, not the choirs in white robes. I was raised in shadows. The orphanage was plain, a square of stone on the edge of Rome. The nuns gave us bread, water, and lessons in catechism. They gave us silence too, so much silence that we learned to move without sound, to breathe without drawing notice. At night I lay awake on a cot that creaked with every shift, staring at the crucifix nailed crooked above the door. The eyes of Christ in that carving were not merciful. They watched. When I was 9, a man came for me. He was not dressed like a priest. No collar, no cassock, a suit black as ash. He asked my name. I told him. "Martelli," he said, as though testing it. "Yes, you will do." That night I was taken from the orphanage. No goodbyes, no explanations. The nuns did not weep. They only crossed themselves as the car carried me away. The place they brought me to was not Rome, though it lay beneath it. A labyrinth of corridors carved into ancient stone, older than basilicas, older than the empire itself. There were others like me, boys and girls with hollow eyes, children without families. We were gathered in a chamber lit by torches. At its center stood an altar of black marble. A cardinal, crimson robes gleaming in firelight, addressed us. "You have been chosen," he said, "not for comfort, not for glory, but for necessity. The church requires weapons as much as prayers. You will be honed into both." We were told to kneel. I remember the stone biting into my knees, the scent of wax and iron. Each of us was given a small blade, not to kill with, not yet, to hold as we swore. The oath was simple but heavy. I renounce family, country, name. I serve only the Holy See. My life is sacrifice. My blood is covenant. I am shadow and sword. I am nothing so that he may be everything. I spoke the words. My voice was thin but steady. When I finished, the blade was pressed to my palm until blood welled. The cardinal smeared it across the altar, a streak of red against black. "Now you belong," he said. From that night, childhood ended. Training consumed us. Days began before dawn with prayers chanted in languages I did not yet understand: Latin, Greek, Hebrew. Then drills, knives, pistols, poisons. We learned anatomy not to heal, but to end. We memorized prayers not to save, but to bind. My body became scarred, my hands calloused, my soul numbed, and always the oath was repeated, whispered before meals, before sleep, before missions that were only exercises at first. The words burrowed into me until they were marrow. I watched others break. Some wept until they were dragged away, never to be seen again. Some defied orders once, and their absence was lesson enough. But I endured, not because I was braver, because I had nothing else. At night I sometimes dreamed of a woman's voice singing lullabies I did not remember learning. In the dream she never turned her face to me. I woke with tears I would never admit. When I was 12, the man in the black suit returned. He took me from the barracks to a chamber deeper than before, where the walls were lined with crosses stripped of Christ. At the center stood a chest. He opened it and drew forth a dagger unlike the ones we trained with. Its blade shimmered faintly, etched with Latin words I could not yet read. "This," he said, "is not toy, not lesson. It is relic. You will carry steel like this one day, and you will use it not against men alone." I stared at him, confusion biting. He smiled without warmth. "The oath you swore was not poetry, boy. It was covenant. You will kill for it. You will die for it. Perhaps you will rise for it." He placed the relic back into the chest and locked it. His eyes never left mine. "Your name no longer matters," he said. "From this night forward, in the Order's eyes, you are Custos, the Watcher, the one who guards, nothing more." The name struck colder than steel, Custos. It erased me more completely than any blade could. That night, lying awake on my cot, I repeated the oath in silence. I am shadow and sword. I am Custos. I am nothing, so that he may be everything. The words tasted of iron. They tasted of blood. It was the last night I ever thought of escape, because I knew, the moment I bled on that altar, my life had ceased to be mine. By the time they trusted me with a target, I was no longer a boy. The years in the underground barracks had shaved me into something sharper than flesh, something that answered only to orders and the oath. My first assignment was a priest in Naples, accused of leading a midnight sect. They gave me a dossier with his name, his routine, and one command: Silere silence him. I followed him for 3 days. On the 4th, I waited outside his rectory. When he stepped into the alley, I slid the garrote over his throat and pulled. He struggled for less than 10 seconds. When he fell, I pried open his jaw and pulled one molar loose with pliers. The tooth went into a small leather pouch, my first trophy. I felt nothing. The second was a woman in Florence who claimed to hear angels. The file said she used their voices to sway young seminarians. I entered her chambers at dawn. She was still kneeling in prayer when my blade found the hollow beneath her ribs. Her blood warmed the floorboards, another tooth into the pouch. The third, a scholar in Venice who wrote that Lucifer had been misjudged. He lectured at the university by day, practiced darker liturgies by night. I shot him from a rooftop with a suppressed pistol. He crumpled without sound. I retrieved his tooth beneath the tolling bells. By then, I was Custos in truth, shadow, sword, nothing else. The pouch at my belt grew heavier, the teeth rattling like dice whenever I walked the silent halls of the Order. I never asked why teeth. They said each one bound a fragment of the fallen, proof that the deed was done, proof that I was doing God's work. Then came the assignment that cracked the silence inside me. The envelope carried only one name: Professor Aurelio Vanni. He was a theologian, celebrated for his lectures on prophecy, beloved by students for his patience. But in the margins of the file, written in crimson ink, were words that set my teeth on edge: non homo, cadence, periculum, not human, fallen, danger. For 3 nights, I tracked him. I watched him speak to crowds who adored him. His words were clear, his smile gentle. He bought bread for orphans, blessed beggars by name. To the world he was kindness incarnate. But the file was not wrong. I saw it in the candles that bent away from him as he preached, their flames shivering in terror. I saw it in his reflection, lagging behind, mouthing words when his lips were still. That was enough. I waited in an alley as the midnight bells tolled. When he passed, humming a hymn, I pressed the dagger to his spine. He froze. Slowly he turned, and his eyes glowed faintly gold, not human, not kind. "So young," he said, "still nothing but tools in their hands." I said nothing. Silence is part of the creed. He studied me, and for a heartbeat sorrow crossed his face. "They lied to you. I once served as you do. I bled for the same altar. But when I questioned the covenant, I became prey." The words meant nothing. Or rather, I told myself they did not. I drove the blade forward, his body convulsed. For an instant, wings of fire erupted from his shoulders, half-formed, broken. His blood ran black. His last breath scraped against my ear. The vigil. Easter. Watch the altar. Then he was gone. I retrieved his tooth, slid it into the pouch, and walked away. Another assignment complete, another fragment silenced. And yet that night, for the first time in years, I hesitated before repeating the oath. The pouch rattled when I set it down, heavier than it should have been. The faces of my targets no longer blurred into shadows. Vani's last words echoed in the hollow of my skull. "Watch the altar." And in that echo, I felt the first fracture in custos. They told me the teeth were proof, each one a fragment of victory, a tally mark of obedience. At first, I kept them in the leather pouch strapped to my belt. The sound of them rattling when I walked was reassuring, like coins clinking in a purse. Payment, not in gold, but in silence, bought with blood. But the pouch grew heavy. When I returned to my quarters beneath the apostolic palace, they gave me a cabinet, small cedar wood, lined with velvet. Inside were rows of tiny drawers. Each bore a number. My instructions were clear. Each target, each kill, each tooth removed and placed in its assigned drawer, cataloged and sealed. The first time I opened it, the cedar smelled sweet, masking the iron tang of the teeth I dropped inside. Drawer 1, Drawer 2, Drawer 3. The numbers grew. Months passed, missions blurred. In Milan, a man who claimed visions of Michael the Archangel. In Avignon, a nun whose voice carried tongues no human ear should know. In Prague, a scholar whose shadow moved against the sun. Each fell, each tooth claimed, each drawer filled. I didn't ask why. But the cabinet did not stay silent. Some nights, when the corridors of the order were empty and the torches guttered low, I thought I heard them. Not voices, not words. A chattering, soft like teeth grinding in sleep. I told myself it was imagination, the echo of bone against steel, the memory of jaws clenching in their final moments. But when I opened a drawer to reassure myself, the teeth stared back at me. Yellow, gray, blackened with rot, some still faintly warm. And I wondered, if these were truly fragments of the fallen, what fragments had I been collecting? Proof of victory, or trophies of damnation. The leather pouch had been ritual. The cabinet was shrine. The night after Vani's death, I dreamed. I was in the catacombs, the drawers of the cabinet stretching into endless halls. Each tooth clicked, one after another, 1,000 tiny jaws gnashing. The sound swelled, deafening. Then, silence. One tooth rolled forward, gleaming gold. It cracked open like an egg, and from within came a whisper. "Watch the altar." I woke drenched in sweat, breath ragged, the dagger clutched in my hand though I had not drawn it. The cabinet sat against the wall, closed, innocent. But when I touched it, the wood was warm. At morning prayers, I repeated the oath with the others. I am shadow and sword, I am custos, I am nothing, so that he may be everything. My voice was steady, my face betrayed nothing, but inside, something shifted. The oath was supposed to numb me. Instead, the words tasted like ashes. That night, when I placed another tooth in its drawer, I did not close it right away. I stared at it, small and lifeless, yet heavier than stone, and I heard Vani's last words again, as if the tooth itself had spoken. The vigil. Easter. Watch the altar. The cabinet was supposed to hold proof of faith. Instead, it had become my confessional. The next assignment came quickly, as if they feared giving me too much time to think. The file was thinner than most. A name, a photograph, and a note in crimson. Sor Matteo Rinaldi. Heretic, periculum, a monk in Perugia. He had once been a brilliant exegete, writing volumes on prophecy, but now the whispers claimed he preached corruption, twisting scripture into poison. My orders were clear. Silence him before his words spread further. I studied the file in silence. His eyes in the photograph were tired, but alive. Not the fever-bright gaze of a zealot, not the emptiness of the damned, just weary. The cabinet of teeth watched me as I packed the dagger, as if waiting for its next relic. I reached Perugia at dusk. The monastery was quiet, stone walls golden in fading light. I moved through cloisters like a shadow, each step drilled by years of training. The others in the order had taught me to blend in with the silence itself. Rinaldi's cell was near the back, lit by a single candle. I entered without sound. He was kneeling, writing. His pen scratched across parchment. His back was straight despite age, his hair silver. He did not hear me until the dagger's edge touched his throat. He did not flinch. He only set the pen down, folded his hands, and whispered, "So it is my turn." I said nothing. Silence is creed. He lifted his eyes to me, steady and calm. "Custos," he said softly, as if he had known me long before. The name chilled me. "You think you are the hunter," he continued, "but you are only the witness." I pressed the blade harder. "You are condemned," I said, the words wrote. "Condemned?" His lips curved in something that was not quite a smile. "No. Released." I drove the blade quick and clean. His breath caught, his body slumped. But before the light left his eyes, he whispered, "The vigil is not what they told you. Watch the altar and you will see." The words struck like a blow. My hand froze on the dagger hilt. He exhaled once, then went still. Blood seeped across the parchment he had been writing, the ink and crimson mingling into unreadable blur. I pulled the dagger free, wiped it, and leaned close. His lips no longer moved, but the echo of his words filled the stone cell. "The vigil is not what they told you. Watch the altar, and you will see." I removed a tooth, placed it in the pouch, and left as silently as I had entered. Back in Rome, I opened the cedar cabinet. The drawers clicked as I slid another tooth inside. They rattled, more insistent now, like teeth chattering in cold. I sat in the dark, the dagger across my knees, the words of two dead men colliding in my mind. Aurelio Vanni. The vigil, Easter, watch the altar. Matteo Rinaldi. The vigil is not what they told you. Watch the altar, and you will see. Two voices, two warnings, both from men condemned as fallen, heretic, corrupted. I stared at the crucifix on the wall, crooked in its frame. The shadows bent around it, as if the room itself recoiled. The oath rose unbidden to my lips. I am shadow and sword. I am Custos. I am nothing, so that he may be everything. But when I spoke the words, they sounded cracked, and the silence that followed was not comfort. It was accusation. The Easter Vigil was meant to be the holiest night of the year, a celebration of resurrection, of light conquering darkness. Pilgrims filled St. Peter's Square, their candles swaying like a sea of stars. Hymns rose in countless tongues. To the faithful outside, it was glory. But I had been warned. Watch the altar. So I did. I slipped through corridors known only to those of us trained for silence. I moved past Swiss guards who never saw me, past priests hurrying with incense and chalices. My robe swallowed me into shadow. At last, I reached the balcony that overlooked the basilica's nave. From there, hidden behind carved stone, I could see the altar. The great bronze canopy of Bernini loomed above, black against candlelight. Cardinals in crimson vestments gathered around the marble table. The Pope himself knelt before it, his mitre glinting gold. Everything appeared as it should, holy, magnificent, until the candles bent. I saw it clearly. The flames tilted away from the altar, not toward it, as though repelled. Wax ran upward, defying gravity, like tears climbing back into unblinking eyes. My chest tightened. The hymns swelled, but beneath them another sound pulsed. A low drone, like stone grinding against stone. I leaned forward, straining to hear. The cardinal's lips moved, but not in Latin, I knew. Not in any tongue I recognized. The syllables scraped, guttural, too old for human mouths. My training had given me fragments of Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek. This was older still. The Pope raised his hands. The marble of the altar shimmered, as if wet. For an instant, I thought I saw veins pulsing within it, like something alive beneath the stone. Then, the incense shifted. The smoke darkened from white to green, curling into shapes that writhed above the altar. Not doves, not angels, horns, wings, talons. No one in the congregation stirred. To them, the vigil was light and music. They did not see. They were not meant to. My hand gripped the dagger beneath my robe. Its veins pulsed faintly, as if recognizing kin. The Pope's voice rose. I expected Latin, the liturgy of Easter. Instead, what emerged was layered. One voice gentle and beloved, the other deep, resonant, older than Rome. The words were not praise, they were bargain. A chill slid down my spine. Valenti stepped forward, lifting a golden chalice. He tilted it, and into it fell not wine, not water, but blood. Fresh, it steamed in the candlelight. The Pope raised the chalice high. The congregation roared in joy, believing it wine. They cheered resurrection. But from where I stood, I saw the altar pulse once, a ripple of darkness spreading across its surface. And in that ripple, I saw eyes, not human eyes, countless, watching, blinking open and shut in the stone. I stumbled back, breath caught. The cabinet of teeth rattled in memory. Vani's voice rang in my skull. The vigil, Easter, watch the altar. Rinaldi's voice followed. The vigil is not what they told you. Watch the altar, and you will see. And I had seen. I forced myself to stay. My training demanded I observe, endure, report. But every fiber of me wanted to run from that sight, from those eyes in stone. The ritual swelled, candles flared, the congregation cheered. The Pope drank from the chalice, the altar shuddered. I swear I heard it breathe. The night after the vigil, I could not pray. The words of the oath burned in my throat like ash. I had seen the altar breathe. I had seen the chalice of blood raised as if it were wine, and I had heard the Pope's voice, layered with something that was not human. When the knock came on my door, I was already awake. A monk in plain brown robe stood outside. His face was shadowed by the cowl, his voice low. "Custos, come." I followed him through corridors I thought I already knew. But this path wound deeper, narrower, until torchlight faded, and only a single lamp guided us. We reached a wooden door, ancient, iron-banded. The monk opened it and gestured. Inside. The chamber beyond was small, lit by one candle. The air smelled of dust and wax. At the table sat a man I'd seen 1,000 times, though never like this. Pope Adrian VII, not in gold, not in white, not in the splendor of the balcony. He wore only a plain cassock. His face was older than I remembered. Lines cut deep, eyes ringed with fatigue. "Sit, Custos," he said. His voice was quiet, human, not doubled. I hesitated. The vigil was still raw in my mind. The same man had stood at the altar, his words layered with darkness. Was this the same man, or another mask? He must have seen the suspicion in my eyes. He raised his hand. "I know what you saw. I needed you to see it." I sat slowly. My hand rested on the dagger beneath my robe, though I did not draw it. The Pope leaned forward. "The covenant you serve is not the covenant of God. It is the covenant of men who feared they could not hold power without bargaining with shadows." His eyes glimmered in the candlelight. Centuries ago, in times of plague and war, a faction within the Curia struck a pact. They believed binding the fallen would keep Rome safe. But every pact demands tribute, blood, secrets, lives. I heard Vani's voice in memory. "They lied to you." I heard Rinaldi's last breath. "The vigil is not what they told you." The Pope's words drove the blade deeper. I whispered, "And you? You drink the chalice. You speak their tongue." His face tightened. "Because I must. They surround me. They think me their vessel. If I resist openly, they will kill me and replace me with one more pliant. So I play the role, to buy time, to find someone like you." His gaze locked on mine. fierce despite the weariness. Custos, you were trained to be their weapon, but you have seen too much. You are not broken. Not yet. The words stung. I wanted to deny them. But the cabinet of teeth rattled in my mind. The altar's eyes blinked in memory. You expect me to believe you? I asked. How do I know this isn't another lie? He smiled, sad and weary. You don't. Faith is never certainty, it is choice. The candle flickered. For an instant, shadows on the wall seemed to stretch long claws toward him. He did not flinch. There is a man, he continued, voice lower now. Cardinal Severin. He leads the covenant within the covenant. He wears scarlet, but his soul is ash. He will tell you the vigil is salvation. In truth, it is coronation of one who is not Christ. My pulse hammered. He reached into his cassock and slid something across the table. A parchment, brittle with age, its Latin ink faded but legible. Sacramentum sanguinis, the blood sacrament. I read the first line. It was no gospel. It was bargain. I looked up. Why me? Because you still doubt, he said. Doubt is dangerous to them. Doubt means you can still choose. The monk at the door stirred. The Pope's eyes flicked toward him, then back to me. You must leave now. If they know you were here, both of us are finished. I stood, the parchment crumpled in my fist. My chest felt heavy, my mind heavier. At the door, his voice stopped me. Custos, I turned. You were never nothing. Remember that. The candle guttered, and for an instant, I thought I saw fear cross his face, not for himself, but for all of us. The monk opened the door and motioned me back into the corridor. I tucked the parchment into my robe and stepped out, forcing my breath to steady. The passage was empty, or so it seemed, yet as I walked, I felt it, eyes following me, unseen but heavy. A shadow shifted at the far end of the hall, too quick to belong to candlelight. I told myself it was only nerves, but when I reached my cell, I found the crucifix above the door slightly tilted, as though someone had been there before me. The parchment burned in my hand, and the oath cracked louder than ever in my head. The letter was waiting on my cot, black wax, unmarked except for the sigil of the dagger and key. My blood chilled the moment I saw it. Orders never came to cells like mine. They were delivered in the council chambers, under watch. A letter alone in my quarters could mean only one thing. I broke the seal. The parchment inside was short, written in precise Latin, Finis custodis hac nocte. The custos ends tonight. No assignment, no explanation, only a sentence. I sat frozen, the words burning into my eyes. My mind flicked back to the corridor I had left earlier that night, the shadow that shifted at the end of the hall, the weight of eyes pressing from nowhere, the crucifix above my door tilted askew. I had told myself it was nerves. Now I knew better. They had seen me. They had marked me. The scrape of leather on stone snapped me back. Footsteps, soft and measured, outside my door, too many for a monk's patrol. I doused the lamp, slid the dagger into my hand, and pressed against the wall. The door creaked open. 3 figures slipped inside, robes black, faces masked. Their movements were silent, precise, the way I had been taught. Brothers. They fanned out, blades glinting faintly in the dark. One whispered, "End it quickly." I moved first. The dagger cut the air in a tight arc, opening the throat of the nearest before he even saw me. He gurgled once and collapsed, blood pattering across the stone like rain. The second lunged low. Knife aimed for my ribs. I caught his wrist, twisted, and heard bone snap. My knee crushed his sternum. He gasped, eyes wide, before I drove his own blade into his chest. The third hesitated. That half-second was enough. I hurled the dagger. It spun once, twice, and sank to the hilt in his eye. He fell without a sound. Silence returned. I retrieved the blade, wiped it on his robe, and listened. More footsteps echoed in the corridor. Not 3 this time. 5, maybe 6. They wanted me erased. And they would not stop. I slipped into the hall, moving low and fast. The torches flickered, shadows stretching long. Figures advanced from both ends, cloaks rippling like wings. One raised a crossbow. The twang cracked the air. I sidestepped, the bolt grazing my arm. Pain flared, sharp, but focus steadied me. I sprinted forward, slammed into him, and rammed the dagger through his throat before he could reload. Two more rushed from the right. I pivoted, low, slicing the tendon of the first. He screamed as he collapsed. The second swung a sword, clumsy with rage. I ducked beneath it, drove the dagger up into his gut, and tore sideways. Warmth splashed my face. The others faltered. They had trained as I had, but they lacked what the order had carved into me. The willingness to finish, the instinct to move before thought. They were weapons. I was Custos. The last one dropped his blade and turned to run. I let him. A warning would spread faster than his blood. I moved deeper into the Vatican's bowels, through corridors that twisted like veins. My chest burned with exertion. My arm throbbed from the crossbow's kiss, but my mind was clear. For the first time, the oath meant nothing. The order had cast me out. Now I was hunter and hunted. I paused at a junction, breath steadying. Somewhere above, bells tolled softly, midnight calling Easter into dawn. The sound mingled with memory. Vanni's whisper, Rinaldi's plea, the Pope's weary confession. The vigil is not what they told you. Watch the altar, and you will see. I looked down at the dagger in my hand. Its silver veins pulsed faintly, alive, as if answering a truth I had not wanted to face. I was no longer their Custos. But perhaps for the first time, I was my own. Rome had not yet woken when I surfaced from the catacombs, my robe soaked with blood not my own. The bells still tolled for Easter. Above ground, the pilgrims sang of resurrection. But beneath the marble, death moved freely. I kept to the shadows, slipping through service corridors that led to the apostolic palace. The parchment of Sacramentum Sanguinis weighed like iron against my ribs. That was when I heard it. Not hymns, not chants, screams. I followed the sound into the Sala Ducale, a hall of frescoes and banners. What should have been a council gathering was a slaughterhouse. Cardinals in crimson sprawled across the floor, their blood spilling in pools that mirrored the gilded ceiling. Some still clutched rosaries, beads slick with red. Others reached weakly for the croziers torn from their hands. And standing above them, other cardinals, their vestments the same, but their faces cold, merciless. Blades flashed in their fists. Some carried pistols, their muzzles still smoking. Brothers killing brothers, shepherds gutting shepherds. I froze in the shadows, breath shallow. One of the loyal cried out, his voice breaking, "This is the house of God." The answer came as steel plunged into his chest. "This is the house of covenant." The words twisted through me. Smoke from overturned braziers coiled through the hall. It stung my eyes, but through the haze I saw Cardinal Severin. His scarlet robes were spotless, untouched by the blood around him. He stood at the head of the betrayers, voice steady as liturgy. "Purge the doubters, purge the weak. Tonight, Rome is reborn." The others echoed him, their chant a perverse mirror of prayer. Purga, purga. I pressed back against the wall, the dagger hot in my grip. My instinct screamed to act, to cut them down, but there were too many, and this was not a battle of blades. It was revelation. A loyalist cardinal staggered toward Severin, hands clasped in prayer. "God will judge you," Severin smiled thinly. "He already has." Then he slit the old man's throat himself, slow and deliberate. The loyalists were finished within minutes. Their bodies lay like toppled statues, the marble floor running red. Severin turned, surveying the carnage. His eyes glinted as if catching mine, though I remained hidden. "Prepare the altar," he commanded. The vigil was but rehearsal. Tonight we crown the true vessel." The traders bowed their heads, voices rising in unison. "Adveniat rex obscurus." Let the dark king come. My stomach twisted. I slipped away before they could sense me, down corridors that shook with distant hymns. Pilgrims above still sang of Christ risen, blissfully unaware that below his shepherds had slit one another's throats. The Vatican was no longer sanctuary. It was battlefield, and I was standing in the middle of its betrayal. At dawn, bells pealed across Rome. They should have been songs of resurrection, but in their tolling I heard only iron. Crowds filled St. Peter's Square, a tide of candles and banners. They sang, they wept, they prayed, believing this day was theirs. None knew that the halls beneath them still ran red with the blood of shepherds. I kept to the shadows of the colonnade, cloak pulled tight. My arm throbbed from the wound of the night before, but my eyes were clear. A platform had been raised before the basilica, draped in white cloth that fluttered in the spring wind. Cardinals loyal to Severin lined the steps, their faces set in masks of piety. Then he emerged. Not Severin, but what Severin had promised. The figure wore robes white as snow, a radiance spilling from him like dawn. His face was perfect, too perfect, symmetry carved not by time but by design. His eyes shone with a light that seemed to pierce the soul, and when he raised his hands, the crowd fell silent. For a moment, even I felt it, warmth, gravity, the urge to kneel. But then I saw it. The candles nearest him bent away, their flames shrinking back in fear. His shadow, cast on the marble steps, was not human. Wings stretched where none should be, horns curled faint beneath the hood of light. A murmur rose through the crowd. The figure's voice followed, layered like the vigil chants, gentle above, resonant beneath. "My children," he said, "the old order is broken. Death has been cast out. From this day, no more hunger, no more war. Only peace under my hand." The crowd erupted. Pilgrims fell to their knees, weeping with joy. Mothers lifted their children high to be blessed. Men tore their garments in reverence. Severin stepped forward, his voice booming. "Behold the true vessel. Behold the one anointed to reign. The Messiah returned." The chant spread, wild, unstoppable. "Messiah, Messiah, Messiah." My hand tightened on the dagger beneath my robe. Its veins glowed faintly, not in reverence, but in warning. I forced myself to look again. Through the glow, I saw the truth. His skin shimmered like molten glass, shifting, unstable. His smile never reached his eyes, and in the corner of his mouth, sharp and small, I glimpsed fangs, a false savior, a fallen clothed in light. I whispered to myself, voice barely audible, "This is no Christ." The crowd would not hear me. They would not believe me. Around me, pilgrims clawed closer to the steps, desperate to touch his robe. One collapsed in seizure at his feet. The figure bent, placed a hand on the man's brow, and the convulsions ceased. The crowd screamed miracle. But I saw the truth. The man's pupils remained black, bottomless. Even as he stood, he was healed only in body. His soul was gone. Severin raised his arms. "This is the covenant fulfilled. This is the reign of peace." The false Messiah spread his arms wide. Light radiated outward, flooding the square, forcing my eyes shut. When I opened them, pilgrims were prostrate, kissing the stones, and above it all, his gaze swept across the square. For one instant, it locked on mine. The smile curved sharper. He knew I saw him. The dagger pulsed hot against my skin. I backed into the colonnade, heart hammering. The warnings of Vanni and Rinaldi rang in my skull. "Watch the altar. The vigil is not what they told you." They had been right, and now I knew. If this false Messiah took the throne of Peter, the world itself would bow to a fallen unless I stopped him. The false Messiah stood at the altar of St. Peter's, his radiance drowning the basilica. The crowd screamed his name, the chant thundering like war drums, Messiah, Messiah. But I saw the shadow beneath the glow, wings stretched where none should be, horns curved in silhouette. Severin lifted his arms. "Crown him!" The cardinals loyal to the covenant brought forth a reliquary, gold and heavy. Inside it lay the crucifix of fire, a relic whispered about in the order, said to be forged from iron touched by the nails of Calvary, tempered in ash and blood. No one dared wield it. Until now. As they lifted it, the basilica shook. The false Messiah's smile widened, his voice layered with thunder. "This world is mine." I moved. From the shadows of the nave I leapt, driving my dagger into the chest of the first cardinal. He fell, blood spattering the marble. The others turned, shock breaking their chant. The dagger cut through them, fast, merciless. Years of training, of killing, poured from me in one stream of violence. But even as I cut them down, I knew steel alone would not end this. The crucifix blazed. The false Messiah reached for it, light spilling from his hands. I seized it first. The weight nearly crushed me. Fire ran up my arms, burning flesh from bone. My vision swam white. The relic did not want me, it wanted faith. Behind me, a voice rang out, weak but steady, the Pope. He stood at the steps, his cassock torn, blood staining his side. Yet his voice rose in Latin, a psalm I had not heard since childhood. Exsurge, Domine, et dissipentur inimici tui. Rise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered. And then others joined. Priests, bloodied but alive after the purge, knelt beside him. Their voices shook, but together they formed a wall of prayer. Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus. The sound was thunder. It wrapped around me, gave the crucifix weight not of iron, but of resolve. Severin saw it, his face twisted. "Stop them!" he roared. The loyalists surged forward, cardinals still dripping red, blades drawn, eyes fever bright. They rushed down the nave, cloaks flaring like the wings of carrion birds. I met them. The dagger in my left hand, the crucifix burning in my right. The first lunged with a sword. I caught it against the relic, sparks flying. My dagger flashed, slashing his throat. Blood sprayed across marble. Two more flanked me, one swung high, one low. I pivoted, ducking beneath the arc, driving the crucifix into the gut of the lower. Fire consumed him, his scream torn away before it could leave his throat. The second faltered, eyes wide, and I finished him with a clean thrust under the jaw. But they kept coming. 6, 7, 10. Their blades clashed against relic and steel, each strike ringing like a bell of war. The Pope's voice rose louder, trembling but unbroken. Non nobis Domine, sed nomini tuo de gloriam. Not to us, Lord, but to your name give the glory. The priests echoed him, their chant now a shield. I felt it, every syllable like breath in my lungs. My muscles burned, but did not break. A knife sliced my side, hot pain flooding me. I staggered, the world dimming. One cardinal raised his blade high for the killing strike, and then his arm froze mid-swing, as though an invisible hand held it. The chant surged, echoing from the dome, rattling the glass. His eyes rolled white, and he collapsed in a heap. Faith had bound him. The survivors faltered, their fury cracking under the weight of prayer. I pressed forward, relentless, cutting them down one by one. Each fall was answered by a swell of chant. Each wound I took was drowned in psalms. At last, only Severin remained. He backed toward the altar, face pale. "You don't understand," he spat. "Without him, the covenant collapses, Rome will fall, the world will drown in fire." I advanced, the crucifix blazing brighter with every step. Then let it drown. Better ash than chains. He screamed and lunged, dagger flashing. I caught his wrist, twisted, and drove the relic into his chest. He convulsed, mouth open in a silent howl, before crumbling into ash at my feet. The false Messiah roared, wings bursting wide. The final battle had come. His light seared the basilica, shaking every stone. Pilgrims outside cried miracle, blind to the truth. Inside, the priests cried louder, their voices breaking, but their words unbroken. I lifted the crucifix high. The fire raced through me, shredding my body from within. My vision blurred, my heart seized, yet I stepped forward, step after burning step. The false Messiah sneered, "You are nothing." The words struck like the oath I had once repeated 1,000 times. I am nothing. But now I answered with my own voice. No, I am his. I hurled myself forward, driving the crucifix into his chest. Light exploded. The basilica split with sound, windows shattering, marble cracking. Shadows poured from the false Messiah, writhing, clawing, dissolving into smoke. His scream shook heaven itself. The fire consumed me. Flesh seared, bones cracked, my lungs collapsed. The last thing I saw was the crucifix blazing like the sun and the Pope's lips still moving in prayer. Then silence. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer on the floor. I stood above it, weightless. My hands glowed, not burned. From my shoulders spread wings white as ash turned to light. The crowd gasped. Some screamed angel, others wept. The Pope fell to his knees, tears streaking his face. "Guardian," he whispered. The false Messiah's body lay crumpled, smoke rising from the wound where the crucifix still burned. His light was gone. I looked at the dagger still strapped to my side, its veins pulsing faintly. It was no longer curse nor chain. It was witness. For the first time since San Callisto, I spoke my true name aloud. I am Enzo Marcelli. The basilica echoed with the sound, and for a heartbeat I felt the world itself breathe lighter. I knew what I had become, not their custos, not their weapon, but his guardian, eternal. The chant of the priests faded into silence, and above, as dawn broke over Rome, the bells tolled once more, not for death, not for covenant, but for resurrection.